want to share here, I don't believe that I am an expert in any of the topics I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about them because there are certain phenomena that are quite clear to me that I see happening in this space that I want to address, and I don't see it being addressed yet. And I actually feel a certain responsibility to make sure that insofar as we have shared insights, that we also share how to be thoughtful about the interpretation and use of those insights. But I'm sure that there are people who have studied the history and evolution and tools and technologies of propaganda and narrative warfare and information warfare much, much better than I have. I would be super interested in having those people on. And same with like psychiatric diagnosis and various lines of it. I'm sure there are more nuanced thinkers. So I'm going to share the way that I think about it. And I would be surprised if in 5 years I'll still think the same way about it. And that's important because this is my best current thinking in an area that I know a little bit about. So I would ask that people take it as a stimulus for your own thinking, including where you disagree, rather than as a, am I right or not right? And if I'm not right, throw it out and don't even have stimulated thinking. And if right, then also don't have stimulated thinking. The ability to treat someone as an authority and then either accept what they say and don't think, or reject what they say and don't think, like both of those are so uninteresting. So my hope is that this video, if it does anything, stimulates your own deeper thinking and own exploration and study and learning and conversation on these topics. Okay, so, and if you disagree with me about something, I'm super interested to know because, like I said, I'm sure that conversations where people disagree is, and in some places they're right, is why in 5 years I will think differently on these things than I do now. Just like I think differently on lots of things now than I did 5 years ago. So one of the places where my thoughts have updated was when I studied the literature on cluster B dynamics. It really both helped and bothered me.
Cluster B dynamics meaning the sort of dark, often called the dark triad. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'll specifically say the thing we call antisocial personality disorder, the sociopathy, psychopathy, and narcissism, I'll particularly focus on those ones. I had always previously taken people who behaved in those ways before I had studied that literature, I took those behaviors as like, from an attachment theoretic perspective, that they had, some kind of avoidant attachment where they had been traumatized so they couldn't trust well, or, something like that, or they were traumatized and the trauma is perpetuating itself in some way. But I took it that way, where then my goal was to help heal the trauma and be redemptive, right? To be compassionate and redemptive. And I think lots of people have a very deep, don't want to just villainize, throw people away, punish, but recognize that insofar as people are hurting people, it's often because they were hurt, and the answer is not just a punitive answer, right? And we know that the just punitive answer itself leads to escalating warfare that leads to a world that's fucked, because we can't keep handling group punitive dynamics, which is war with escalating tech. So, but I was very oriented in that way, and I noticed that there were lots of people who had addictions and lied and did violent things that I spent time with, and they really changed. Like someone helping them have new experiences really changed them. Awesome. I also noticed some people didn't, which I always took as a failing of my capacity to be more effective with them. And as I started to study the literature, I saw that where the failings had occurred and corresponded with the places where I had the most regrets in my life, which usually involved giving the benefit of the doubt. So I trusted someone where I actually felt that I shouldn't. I kind of knew that I shouldn't, but I talked myself into it out of give the benefit of the doubt and be redemptive, which means I gaslit myself, right? When we gaslight other people, what that means usually is that we share some kind of rationally compelling argument that has them override their own intuitive sensibility. Sometimes we will use our virtues to gaslight ourselves. And this is, again, where we have to be careful, because is it that I have a real intuitive knowing and I'm gaslighting myself with an inappropriately applied generalization? Or is it that the thing I'm calling intuition is actually bias and prejudice, and using logic to help clear it is the right thing? This is fucking tricky. And I can share no absolute rule other than know both of those things can be the case, and really be thoughtful about it. And create friendships with people that you also think are very thoughtful and kind of wise, and explore the topics with them. And like, I don't have an algorithm, and I don't believe there is one. I believe one can simply understand the different types of failure case and be attentive to it. I think the attempt to reduce it to an algorithm will always be damaging. So I noticed that there were places where I gaslit myself and overrode my own sense that someone was not trustworthy, because I wanted to offer trust to them in a way that would help them be able to trust, because obviously offering trust in good faith can help other people be able to trust. But of course, if I trust someone and as a result invite them into my life or circles or whatever in certain ways where then other people that trust me now can be hurt by those people, then I actually became untrustworthy myself to the other people through my own poor discernment or poor boundaries. And those were the places where I usually had the deepest regrets, where I'm like, man, I actually did something that led to other people getting hurt, or me not upholding boundaries that I should have. And it was actually out of my own desire to be redemptive and have good faith where it was inappropriate. And so when I started understanding the NPD, sociopathy, I started saying, oh, there are certain people where whom I'm not going to say healing isn't possible or redemption isn't possible, but it is of a different type. What it would take to heal it, like the pathology is of a different type. It has created some very powerful self-reinforcing loop that eats most types of therapy without actually addressing the loop, and simply uses them to get better at doing the thing. And so you either need to not engage, or engage of some type that could be effective, which I would say I don't see anyone who is generally good at that currently. So then there are some times where rather than being redemptive, the higher value is actually being protective, which is, again, still not punitive, right? And it doesn't close the door on ever redemptive, but it certainly says I'm not going to try and do it and fail where I'm actually not equipped to do it because of certain things that I notice. So yes, if there's someone who is oriented to power in a way that maybe has some defended blind spots where they don't even see that they are, or they don't hold it that way, or they don't hold that there's a problem with it or whatever, and I show them, hey, the reason I don't trust you is these three things, then what they know is, oh, I will make sure around him to never demonstrate those three things again. And now they have gotten better, right, at being able to be covert in that process. So we do have to be careful about, hey, when I offer feedback, is this going to help someone actually heal because they have the earnest willingness and desire and capacity to heal? Or is this going to help weaponize their orientation? Now, I have also seen, obviously there are certain circles that don't talk about healing and psychotherapy very much. They might talk about religion or tradition or just science or whatever. Then they're in the circles that talk more about things like healing and healing trauma. I don't know any places that attract narcissists and sociopaths better, because there's a lot of vulnerable people there that would be good sources of narcissistic supply, and who are willing to hear shit like, that's just your ego, or me doing this is me just being authentic, or being vulnerable, or expressing my emotions, or whatever else that basically allows bad behavior under the name of some therapeutic or spiritual idea. And this is why we see so many spiritual teachers that we then see later were being sexually or financially or emotionally, psychologically abusive with people. And in the therapeutic space, because basically, insofar as they're oriented to weaponize relationship and mind control, the domains of mind control and the domains where there is legitimate authority, like a priest or a therapist or whatever, where people are offering some degree of trust and vulnerability to legitimate authority, there are no more powerful positions to be able to do that thing. Now, of course, also economics, politics, military, those other things, but these are particularly sensitive and susceptible areas.